Look up the word crazy in the dictionary, and you might just find an asterisk beside the definition that says, listen to the Subiquitous podcast featuring Sue Duffield, and you'll find out what crazy means. Sue's travelogue journey of unfiltered stories, impossible miracles, and faith-filled fun will be revisited right here. So buckle up, and let's get going with this humorous travelogue of an unfiltered saint, Subiquitous.
I'm sitting in my closet with my cap and my glasses and my nightgown on, and Jeff walked out of the kitchen and saw me and looked at me and said, "What kind of getup is that?" Well, Jeffrey, this is the getup that you wear when you do podcasts, because it is not
really?
visual. That's right, it's not visual.
Okay.
So I can wear whatever I want for a podcast.
Yes, you can. And may I say, it's a good thing there's no visual attached. So that's okay.
Oh,
it's rather
right.
comical.
It is
looking.
kind of funny to look at, but I'll take a picture and maybe post it. I don't know. Maybe we'll see what happens.
No, you won't.
This is episode number 80. You know, last week, oh my goodness, I had to actually let it savor. What I mean by that is we did episode 79 about 2 weeks ago, and I let it up there, and I could not even imagine doing another episode last Friday, so I just promoted the Evie podcast episode again.
Well, that was a special program.
Oh, and the downloads and the subscriptions that came, and the people that have been sharing with me that they were listening to that episode over and over again. I was just so honored, first of all, that Evie would even acquiesce to being on the program. But more so than that, I remember one phrase that she said, Jeff. She said, "It's just such a kick to be on this episode." Well, it was a kick to have her on this episode and on this podcast. So thank you to all of you who have sent such great responses about how you enjoyed that.
Always was a sweetheart. Always
and she
will
is.
be.
And she's the real deal.
Definitely.
And, you know, this is the thing. Today is December 3rd, and it's 2021. And this past week, we were with some really wonderful people as well. The Veranda Benefit, the Veranda Ministries right there in Gallatin, we've had Mary Ann Southerly on the program talking about her incredible ministry of reaching those with dementia and Alzheimer's and the aging. And we did a big benefit on November the 30th and included a tribute quartet and Riley Clark and Melissa and Jim Brady and Lauren Talley, and all of the Talleys were there. In fact, Deborah and Roger, it was wonderful to connect with them. And Tribute Quartet, I already said that. Who else am I missing? Juanette Turner was there.
Yeah, you got about everybody, I believe.
Okay. And Jeff and Sue Duffield did their thing, and I don't think anybody expects what we do. I mean...
No one expects... mainly what you do, but no one expects it.
Well, and another thing I thought is that we've said this for years, if we can entertain the musicians in the crowd, everybody else will just go right along with you, right?
Yep.
And so my thought was, let's entertain the troops, and then hopefully the audience will come along. And they did, and we were excited about that. But we found out that Mary Ann told me, we raised a lot of money for the Veranda, and I am excited about that. It's wonderful.
Yep.
So forgive me if I sound like I'm, what did I say earlier? I said I felt like I was under a truck.
Yeah, you said you felt like you sounded like you were under a truck.
And the reason I said
was
that,
an interesting metaphor.
It was a metaphor, and it's not a good one, but at least... It reminded me of the days of my dad working underneath his vehicles, and he'd be underneath there, working on something, and he'd go, hand me the plug. Can you hand me the wrench?" And so that's what I feel like I sound like today. So been suffering with this stupid sinus yucky.
Well, let me say this about that. You're not as congested as you were earlier this week. You may not feel that way, but I can hear an improvement. And you had your get-up on that you have on this morning. So these are, when you're not feeling well, these are signs I look for.
My hat and my glasses and my nightgown.
When you're not feeling good,
man.
you don't wear your hat and nightgown and glasses.
In other words, what you're saying is I don't entertain you if I'm sick.
You may interpret that in any way that you wish. I'm just stating this is your humble reporter giving you the background information.
I shouldn't laugh. Anyway.
No, you shouldn't, because if
Well,
you get laughing, you're going to get coughing. But that's okay.
I want to get right into this wonderful episode. This is number 80. And first of all, thank you. Thank you to all of you out there, our family and our wonderful friends and listeners. We've got a couple of dates coming up that will be in New Jersey. We're going to be in Ocean City, New Jersey on December the 8th, that's right, at the Flanders Hotel for a Christian Women's Luncheon. And then also the 9th, we're going to be at the Savoy Inn in Vineland, New Jersey for another Christian Women's Luncheon. I believe tickets are still available if we are listening today on December the 3rd. After the 3rd, I'm not sure, but I think you can still get tickets today if you are listening. That's in the Flanders Hotel on the 8th, and then the Savoy Inn in Vineland, New Jersey on the 9th. All these events are on my website, SueDuffield.com, on the road, and you can find out there's information about how you can get tickets if you'd like, if you're a Christian woman. And even if you're a heathen woman, we'd love to have you. How about that one? So also then on December the 11th, we're going to be at the Mount Eaton Bible Church in Saylorsburg, Pennsylvania, for a Christmas dinner, and the public is welcome to that as well. And then on that Sunday morning, we're back filling in Sunday morning for Pastor Doug Hayes, who has been suffering, has had so many difficulties physically, and he's still in the hospital from what I'm understanding. So we're going to fill in for him at the Mount Eaton Bible Church in Saylorsburg, Pennsylvania on December the 12th.
And it's interesting, providential, if you will, not that Pastor Doug is ill. That's not what I'm saying. But the fact that remains he did become ill. And all this was set up weeks, months ahead. And this whole trip is rather interesting. This timing is what I'm trying to say. Because of that, we'll be able to fill in for him. We're happy to do that, of course. Although we'd like to see him there. But also regarding the subject matter of our podcast today, it's also very providential in the timing of it this coming week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jeff lost his Uncle Walter on... What date was it? Was it
Monday?
Tuesday night?
No, let me stop and think. This has been a crazy week.
It has. I've lost track of days.
Let me start. Was Wednesday? Yeah.
Okay, Wednesday.
Yeah.
Uncle Walter Harris, the last living legacy, basically, on your mother's side.
Yeah, unless I'm in for a big surprise.
Unless you're in for a big surprise.
He is the last one. Yeah.
But the name of this episode, Jeff, is Homer and Jethro.
I don't know what to call Homer and Jethro. They were a comedy team.
And Uncle Walter.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Let's go back to when you were just a young child, and start off just by telling some of the crazy things that happened with you and your Uncle Walter. I think it's good.
Just a little bit of a backdrop. Uncle Walter. Let's put it this way: my grandparents purchased a home in my hometown of Bridgeton, New Jersey, a long time ago. Years later, my mother and father got married. They bought the other half of the house. They call them duplexes today.
Yes, that's right.
In those days in South Jersey, we called them half a double.
The half a double.
Exactly.
You know, that's still there too.
Yeah. But
because I was talking to somebody that lives in Vineland, New Jersey, and she said, "Yeah, I share a half a double with my mother-in-law."
if you live in New Jersey, that's what you call them.
You're half a double,
especially South Jersey. You don't call them duplexes. But for those who do not live in that part of the world, it's referred to. It's considered a duplex. Anyway, he was single. Of course, he was also very young. When I was born, he was 21. So, he was still living with his parents there in the half a double. And he worked right down the street. When I say stone's throw, I'm not really exaggerating, but he worked at the Owens, Illinois glass factory.
There was no need for a car. I mean, he could just walk to work.
He did own a car, but not not to go to work. No, there definitely was no reason for him to have an automobile to go to work, because it was maybe a 5-minute walk to the entrance to the plant. Worked there for many years, as a matter of fact. Anyway, so Walter, let's just say Walter never married, although he did. It was a brief marriage, and that was years later, and no need to go into all those details.
Oh, no, we need to get into that later.
Oh, we do.
Because there's some funny stuff about that.
Well, there is, but anyhow, okay.
We'll save that for
I'll let you bring that up later. Anyway.
Can I just say from the get-go, though,
Yes.
I will say this before you get into all of that.
Okay.
My take with Walter is that he was a very eclectic man.
Yeah, eccentric is another word.
Very unique.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And he had some eclectic, eccentric tastes.
Yes.
Yeah. He was the All-American kid. He played ball in the high school team, played real low minor league baseball in our area there. Played for the Owens, Illinois team. They used to call it the Owenized team.
The Owenized team. I kind of remember that.
Yeah, he used to do that. Anyway, but so being 21 when I was born and living that close proximity, I mean, literally, you go out the front door, across the porch, and there you are at Grandmom's and Grandpop's and Uncle Walter's place. So we ended up spending a lot of time together because he worked shift work. And there were times he was home during the day, and my poor dad had to work a living. He had to actually work a 9-to-5 kind of job working at the grocery store. So I hung around a lot as I got older with Uncle Walter. And he would, hence the title of our album, he liked jazz. He liked comedy records. And he also he was fascinated with steam locomotives.
All right, stop right there.
What those things have to do with another, I don't know.
Stop right there.
Yeah.
There were actual albums of steam locomotives leaving and returning to the stations.
Hard to believe, but there were phonograph records. You could sit there and they would tell you the exact model number of the engine, what station they were entering or leaving, and they had the recording. You could sit there and you could hear the train coming into the station.
That's right.
And the steam and the being let off and the bell ringing and the sounds of the conductor and so forth. And then you'd also hear the same sounds or similar sounds when the train would start up and leave the station.
And this is what makes me wonder, because
we had a lot of time on our hands.
Yeah, my grandfather, Fred Link,
yes, another
also
train aficionado.
Right.
Yes.
Would we'd go over and listen to these train albums.
I was forced to. Because nobody else in the family, I don't even think his own mother and father wanted to hear these records.
And wasn't it your uncle that used to make fun of the Salem County guys that did all kinds of stupid stuff?
We lived,
you're in Cumberland County.
Yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but we lived in Cumberland
County.
County.
We're talking about the trains.
And well, his own father was a Salem County native.
That's right.
And supposedly the stereotype was they were called the Salem County Fellers.
Yes, back in the day,
because they were farmers.
Right.
And nothing wrong with being a farmer, of course.
But you got to be careful what comes out.
Yeah.
Later down the road, you never know who you're talking to.
Well, that's it. Yeah. And he would kind of poke fun at the Salem County Fellers. Again, talking about his own father.
Yeah.
And years later, his nephew ends up marrying a Salem County felleress
that used to listen to locomotive albums.
Yeah. So anyway, as a kid growing up, Uncle Walter would play me these steam locomotive records. He'd play me Bob Newhart records, the comedian. The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart, as a matter of fact.
Goodness.
And that, I think you can still get that album, as a matter of fact.
See, let me just stop here. This is not, this is not just Mad Magazine that gave you all of your humor bone.
No, it wasn't. No, there's other, and it goes from there. Bob Newhart, he also played me, made me sit there listen to Spike Jones records.
In the Wacky Wacketeers.
Yeah, and if you don't know who Spike Jones is, I'm sure, I know there is information. I'm sure I know. There's examples of Spike Jones music on YouTube. And he also would force feed me Homer and Jethro.
I'm not familiar with Homer and Jethro. I mean, I know the name. I don't think that I ever sat down and said, "Oh, let's listen to some Homer and Jethro albums." What in the world?
Homer and Jethro were really pretty funny. They were a country music comedy team.
Okay.
I think one played guitar, the other played mandolin, and country humor kind of thing. But they would also take standard songs of the day and fracture the lyrics, so to speak. Yeah,
sounds like my kind of humor.
Yeah. When we get done, I'll look it up. There's got to be. I haven't looked it up before, but there's got to be stuff on YouTube of Homer and Jethro. And in their day, they were on network television, the whole bit. They were big, and they were funny. I mean, I can remember listening. And yeah, this is where all the mindset comes from. Yeah, there's no doubt. So we did that. We listened to a lot of those records in those days. He taught me how to play checkers. He taught me how to play Old Maid.
Oh, and
the card game.
Okay.
And Chinese checkers.
Just stop 1 minute.
Okay.
Do you know how difficult it is for you to play games? You tell me, I don't play card games and I don't play board games.
I play Old Maid. And you know what? I haven't played Old Maid in I don't know how long.
I know, but you're the one that used to brag, I don't play games. And now I'm finding out that you used to play games with your Uncle Walter.
Old Maid. That's it.
You said Chinese checkers.
Well, that's not a card game.
No, but still, it's a game.
I played Monopoly with you dozens of times.
It's like pulling teeth.
Anyhow, moving on. Let's see what else. He was also insistent that I have a career in professional baseball because he liked baseball, and to his dying day was a big fan of professional ball, especially the Phillies, the Philadelphia Phillies.
Oh, there's no doubt.
But when I got to be the age of 5 or 6, went out for Christmas one year and bought me a complete, all pieces there, catcher's outfit. Mask.
And the reason was?
Because he wanted to teach me how to play ball. And he wanted me to be a catcher. Shin guards, chest protector, helmet, face mask, the mitt, everything. I got the whole 9 yards. And generic baseball uniform to wear along with it.
Nice.
And he would pitch to me in the backyard. Again, of our half a double, he'd come out there and he would pitch to me with the provision that I swing left-handed. He would not pitch to me if I didn't swing left-handed.
And there was a reason why he gave you a catcher's uniform.
Because catchers to this day are in short supply. It's probably the one position that no one wants to play on a major league baseball team because you get physically beat up.
Yeah.
So everybody wants. Yeah, it's a very physically demanding sport or a position. Outfielder or something like you just stand around waiting for the guy to throw the ball. But catcher, totally different thing. You get hit with foul balls and baseball bats and guys running into you and all that kind of thing. But because of that, there's more of an opening for if you're any good.
So he was trying to groom you.
He wanted me to be a professional baseball player.
And that is to be a catcher and then also bat from the wrong side.
And if you or
the right, whatever side.
Depends on what state of mind you're in.
So to this day.
But the reason being is if you're hit from the left-handed side, the theory goes you're a step closer to first base.
See that.
So that's to this day, anything I swing in my hand, I'm going to swing left-handed.
Let me say something.
But I write and throw right-handed.
If you really, really put as much effort into baseball as you did music. Well, think about it, though. What a great story you'd be sharing on national television right now. Yeah, when I was a kid growing up, I was that Sandlot kid with my Uncle Walter in the backyard who, it's a pretty cool story.
But there was one element that was missing. I didn't have the talent for it. I don't know. Maybe I would have been a decent player. I'm sure I wouldn't have been a professional ball player. But as I got older, I didn't have the time to devote to playing ball like I should have, so I didn't develop.
And another thing, as he got older, he didn't marry until later in life, but he never had children. So you really were his
kids.
kid, and
my brother and I both.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And as he got older, he transitioned from playing ball to becoming an umpire. And we had in our hometown, still do, they call it the Bridgeton Invitational Tournament every year. And they bring traveling professional league
We went a few
baseball
times.
teams.
I remember going on a date day.
Hardball teams, and
Yeah.
come to town in August of every year and play a week or two of games over there. And the committee would try to bring in personalities on different nights to draw crowds.
Right.
And he has told me stories about Gene Mauch, who was the manager of the Phillies. He met him.
That's right.
Ted Williams, famed hitter and Hall of
Oh, my
Famer from the
goodness. I didn't
Boston Red
realize that.
Sox.
Yeah.
Yeah. He said he pulled in a big blue Cadillac convertible with a blonde in the front seat. Yep. And my uncle was getting his gear out of his car, and he looked over at him and yelled, "Teddy Ball Game," and which is what his nickname was when he was
my
playing.
goodness.
And he said Ted Williams got out of his car and said, he says, "It's been 20 years since anybody's called me by that name."
Oh, my word.
And Pete Rose came down there from one year when the Phillies, he was playing for the Phillies.
Okay.
John the Count Montefiusco was a pitcher for the San Francisco Giants, made an appearance. Mark the Bird Fidrich, who pitched for the Detroit Tigers, also came
Don't you
down
love
there
all
and
those
pitched.
nicknames?
Oh,
that's.
baseball.
I mean, I guess they still do it, but it seemed like it was very.
And
very
these
interesting.
are guys, these are personalities and athletes and all that Walter got to meet,
Right.
Because he was umpiring for him, and he was a good ump. I went to some of the games that he umpired. He was a good ump, and no nonsense. Needless
No.
to say, yeah, he was a very good umpire in that. So, and one quick story. Those who know the Phillies' history, in 1964, they blew the pennant. They lost a 7-game lead with 12 games to play.
That was
And
awful.
Gene Mauch was the manager back then. And because he misused his bullpen and his starting pitching is the main reason why they lost the lead. He overpitched some of his players and wouldn't play some of his pitchers that he needed to. Didn't trust them. After that was all over, the next year or so, he came down to the Bridgeton Invitational Tournament where my uncle was umpiring. His father, my grandfather, was there, a very quiet man, even more so than my Uncle Walter. And he was sitting there in the stands. And Walter said he took Gene Mauch over to introduce him to my grandfather. And when he did, he said, "Mr. Mauch, this is my dad, Mr. Harris, and nice to meet you." My grandfather, which is totally out of character, looked at Mauch and said, "How could you not pitch those guys at the end of the season?" I just was totally out of character for my grandfather to do something like that.
Well, they took baseball to a level of seriousness.
Well, back
that, like,
then
I've
it was still the major game in this country. Yeah,
and-
football
and-
was not as popular as
well,
it is
and not
today.
only that, it was the major entertainment for guys. Let's just face it.
Right.
And I do have to say I love watching baseball in person. It's really hard for me to watch on television.
I know.
I love listening to it. On as
You gotta follow the strategy.
I understand.
I learned that from my uncle.
I know that.
And also, my uncle and my grandfather could not pronounce the town of Cincinnati, Ohio.
They could not pronounce Cincinnati, Ohio. How would they say it?
So it was Cincinnati.
Cincinnati, with an A instead of an I.
I don't know. They just couldn't say it. They would constantly refer to the Cincinnati Reds.
That's weird.
Yeah,
That's weird.
the only people I've ever heard say
that's
it was my grandfather and my uncle. But so he was a rather eccentric and eclectic individual. But he was kind of quiet, like you mentioned. But yet, when you get him talking about a subject that he was interested in, of course, you couldn't keep him quiet.
Right. If you ever even mentioned the Phillies, forget it.
Yeah, you'd
have to stand there and you'd have mold growing on your feet because you'd have to.
And one of the things he did when I was very young, I'm 2 or 3 years old, he bought an 8mm film camera and started taking family pictures. And I'm sure people have seen these pictures of when they're doing family film in those days, not videos.
And they're always in fast motion.
Right, and you have this tree
Neon lights
with these floodlights on it that you'd hold up,
blind your eyes out.
Exactly.
Gouge them right out.
He
of your
had
head.
all that. He had all that, and as a result, exists today. And due to your foresight and your efforts, there exist DVDs because you went and got them one time.
Yeah, I called him one day and I said, Walter, I'm going to come over and I'd like to gather as many of your 8mm film if I can, and I'm going to put it to DVD. And he was thrilled, actually.
Yeah,
And
I think he was.
I spent that day and I just told him how much I appreciated him letting me borrow these, because there was another young man by the name of Ray Clark,
Right.
who is now in heaven, who was a good friend, who said, if you can get them, Sue, I will put them to DVD.
And that was a lot of time.
That was a lot of time. I mean, a lot of time.
So now we have DVDs of yours
you running
truly,
around like a little tyrant.
and 2 and 3 years old with my there's a bit of footage with my great-grandmother,
Yeah.
who was an immigrant from Ireland.
That's right.
She's in there. My mother and father, when they were very young, and my mother had black hair, and my grandmother, and there's all sorts of people. Just that it wouldn't be, maybe 30 seconds worth of interest to the average person, but obviously quite significant in the Duffield Harris family, if you will.
Right.
But yeah, Uncle Walter was one of those behind the scenes supporters. He was a big fan of yours truly, and you. He thought the world of you.
It's funny.
He would never say it.
No, he'd just show up at some of the events that we'd sing,
Right,
and sit on the second or third row and smile. And,
Yep.
And then leave by.
Yeah, I don't believe I ever, and he's a product of the times. I don't believe I ever heard him say, "I love you." To
no.
me, but I knew he did.
Sure.
And was very kind. He was very helpful to you and I at different times along our career, if you will, and very supportive of us and very helpful. I'll just let it go at that.
Yeah.
In his own way, in his own quiet way, and he was quite the individual.
Let's go back. We were still in high school, Jeff. I mentioned it earlier in the episode. Walter finally, I guess he was in his, was it his late 40s? He decided to get married?
No, late 30s.
Late 30s,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, who are we going to... There's nobody out there we can offend when we can say this, but he ends up marrying...
Ain't nobody going to hear it that's going to be offended.
No,
yeah.
He ends up marrying his cousin.
I don't think it was first cousin. I don't remember.
No, I don't think it was.
I think it was second.
But still, it was kind of like, even as a 16-year-old, I'm sitting there going,
huh?
Wait a minute, what?
Let me just say this. I loved my grandmother. Okay, my grandmother loved me.
She had some unique ways about
Yes, she did. She's also in heaven, and I look forward to seeing her one day.
Yeah.
But back in those days, let's just say Walter was a little special for her.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way, and I won't go any further than that. But a little bit of favoritism there, and I can tell you from personal experience because I was the kid that went along on some of these visits. He would go in his very nice Oldsmobile and later his '62 Chevy Impala to go see certain young ladies.
Sure.
Because he was
a good-looking guy.
And he was
really
still
was.
in his early 30s.
Kind of like that Hollywood mystique look to him.
He was a good-looking guy.
He was a good-looking
no doubt.
guy.
And he dated some very nice
Wonderful,
ladies and very attractive ladies.
And your grandmother stood in the way of that.
She did.
Yeah,
I don't know what she did because I wasn't old enough, but he never married any of them.
I don't understand that either.
And I, even as a 4 and 5 and 6 year old riding with him, he'd go to see these girls when he was off during the day from shift work, and he'd take me with him.
Right.
And because it's just a social call. They didn't go out on serious dates like we would think today.
Yeah.
But he would take me along because I'm the nephew,
Aww.
and they were pretty girl. And even at that age, I'm thinking, he ought to marry this one.
See,
She's pretty.
You already had your eye on what a good-looking woman looks like. So.
Yes, I did. There's lots of stories of that where I recognized that early on. I don't know why, but I always had an affinity for pretty ladies.
All right, so let's go ahead, though. I was talking about Miriam.
So he finally got connected with Miriam, his cousin from Philadelphia, who had moved to California.
And they get married.
And moved back. And
we sing at the wedding.
You sang. I have the picture. You in your blue suit and your white go-go boots.
Yeah, these boots are made for walking.
Yeah, and they got married in her home church, in a Presbyterian church in South Philadelphia, with a huge pipe organ, and of course,
Miriam was late by an hour.
Yes, and little Jeffy was playing the pipe organ for the ceremony, so that meant Jeffy had to scramble for 45 minutes.
Amazing Grace, how great thou art.
I was
you were
playing
all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, because I didn't plan to be playing for an hour. I thought I'd play for 20 minutes and do the ceremony. So you haven't lived until you've heard "He Touched Me" played on a Presbyterian pipe organ. It's a rather interesting experience.
It is, and I thought, if that wasn't a warning right there, that this marriage might not last.
This is the woman that walked in my mother's house at my graduation party with a cake baked and walked in. There was no icing on it.
No, she had to make the icing in your mother's kitchen.
She walked in my mother's kitchen, said, "Jude,
I need to make some icing.
Do you have any icing I could use?" I thought, yeah, okay. But anyway.
I'm not saying that...
It didn't last long.
All the craziness isn't just on your side of the family, but it sure is...
No, but we got our share.
It sure is funny, and I will say this, too, that, when we moved to Nashville, it kind of made it difficult for us to keep in touch as much as we could with Walter. I mean, we would call him, of course, but we weren't able to be with him until... unless we were up there.
Right.
But we noticed in the last year that there was some disconnect going on.
Little slippage. I called him a little over a year ago at Christmas. But I called him and he answered the phone, and usually I would tell him, "Uncle Walt, this is Jeff."
Right, and he was right there.
Yeah, and I did that, and it took him maybe 10 or 15 seconds before he acknowledged who I was. It was blank, and I thought, because he was getting up in years. And then events this past year, some tragic events, actually, unfortunate events, happened where he was in a truck accident. He went out and was driving late at night in a rainstorm, which he shouldn't have been doing, and had an accident, and that put him in the hospital, and where they realized that he was struggling with dementia.
And there we go. It's another story, again, of exactly how my grandfather accelerated his journey to heaven. Yeah. There's something, as we've talked with Marianne Southerly of the Veranda Ministries here, like I've said before, in Gallatin, that deals with people that have dementia and have Alzheimer's. The brain obviously controls the body. And you don't actually die of dementia. You don't die of Alzheimer's. No. But it's all connected.
It shuts down the body.
Right.
And so... Yeah. And then the last few months, he was telling my sister that his mother was coming to pick him up. Right. And he wanted to get out of the hospital and in the worst way and go home. And his mother passed away in the late 70s, my grandmother. And but yet... and those of you that have been around folks with dementia or Alzheimer's realize exactly what I'm talking about. It's quite a normal progression there. Right. And but again, this past week he had been in a nursing home since the summer, and just progressing the way it does. And we found out this past week that he had become ill. Right. And went downhill real quick. And then ended up passing away very fast this past Wednesday. Yeah. And given the circumstances, I was actually praying for. I didn't want him to linger and just vegetate, if you will, in a nursing home. That's no way to live. And especially, and let's be honest, this is what the podcast is about. We're not covering anything. We're just being as blunt, honest as we can be. In life generally,
there's just some things that, we tried so hard with your Uncle Walter to get him to do a living will and to do different things that we would be able to at least make his transitioning, and he would never do that.
No, I tried.
And Jeff, I got to tell you, you were so good though, and your sister especially in New Jersey, who's had to deal with this firsthand.
She's done yeoman's work, as they say.
Exactly.
Yeah, caring for Uncle Walt, because I wasn't there, obviously, in the last year, being 600, 700 miles away.
And then here's a good thing, too. You were just in a Zoom meeting with all of the
This past Monday, we were having
proceedings.
Because we were trying to obtain guardianship to take care of him and handle his affairs. And interestingly enough, it was postponed because the judge's office didn't do a background check on me.
Well, I could have given him the background check. I mean, seriously, just call me.
I could have done it myself, for that matter. They ain't that much there.
But isn't it like God that we've talked about the starts and the stops in our life?
Yep. Very providential.
Oh my goodness, Jeff, I could just cry thinking about how.
And we were kind of frustrated Monday morning when we sat online for an hour and a half.
You were at least there sitting behind that.
And got nothing accomplished and postponed until January. But my sister said something very profound, and she said, there's a reason for this.
There is a reason, and we found out.
And I said, you're right.
Yeah.
And the next morning, she called me at 7:30 in the morning and said that the nursing home had called and that he was very ill, and they were taking him to the hospital, and they did. And the next day, they took him to hospice, and by 9:30 or so Wednesday evening, he was gone.
Right.
Which was our prayer, that he didn't suffer, that he didn't struggle, that it was no lingering, and God was merciful.
He is merciful. In fact, and then on December the 10th, 1 o'clock, we're going to have a service for him, for Walter Harris, in Bridgeton, New Jersey at Freitag Funeral Home. And I often thought, wouldn't it be fun to have locomotive records playing in the background, or an Earl Garner record playing, or Homer and Jethro in the background? Why not?
Well, I think we're gonna bury him in his Phillies jersey.
Yeah.
Which would be appropriate too.
Well, Jeffrey, I want to say this to you.
Okay.
Losing family members is never easy. It's never easy. I don't care the age; it matters not.
Right.
But at the same time, you have a great legacy, and when you look back and you think about the fun times that you had with your Uncle Walter, and how he continued to bless you.
Yep.
Even to the point where when we were building a recording studio and we needed some extra funds, and we'd already borrowed a bunch of money from the bank, and we needed, I think, like $5,000 more.
Yep.
And your uncle was like, well, shoot, here's a check.
Yeah.
And then
Didn't think twice.
Then said, I don't need it back.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the legacy that I think we want to leave in everything that we do, that we, as Exodus 34:6 says, the Lord God is merciful, gracious, he's long-suffering, and abounding in goodness and truth. And I don't doubt for 1 minute that even though Uncle Walter was kind of shy and maybe introverted and not really the social butterfly of South Jersey at all, at the same time, he had a relationship with God that was firm.
Oh, yeah.
And in his own way, which is so cool, because in personalities, we don't have to be the same. We don't have to be, the same kinds of people. But God, in his infinite wisdom, created Walter Harris to be who he was, and then to leave a legacy for your sister.
And we had a lot of
and you.
We had a lot of theological discussions in later years.
Well, that's true too.
And he and I on our phone conversations, and he knew his Bible.
Yeah, he sure did.
He did a lot more than he let on, and because in the early years when he was young, he was the black sheep of the family.
He was. He was the black sheep.
Because he, dare I say it, he smokes cigarettes.
This is an honest podcast.
He smokes cigarettes.
Yeah. But he gave it up later.
Oh, he did. Oh, he hasn't smoked cigarettes for many, many years. Yeah, he walked away from that many years ago, And I guess if that's the worst thing a person could do in this life,
Right.
But back in those days, in the circles that we were in, I mean, dear Lord, if you even walked past the stand in the store to buy cigarettes,
Right.
you were just But he knew his Bible, and as I said, in later years, we got a chance to talk about things on the phone in our several of our, as you know, phone discussions. Like that one time we were driving from Venice, Florida, to Fort Lauderdale. Was it? Yeah, it was Fort
I think
Lauderdale.
you talked to him for like 17 hours.
Well, it wasn't.
It felt like it in the
17 hours,
car.
but it was the entire trip
Yeah, it
across
was
the
the
bottom part of the state of Florida. We drove,
Yeah.
and I spoke to him on the phone the entire time.
Right.
And if you're hard to believe, I couldn't get a word in edgewise.
Yeah, you know what? And speaking of getting a word in edgewise, we got to quit.
I know we do.
But
Yep,
in the meantime, I will say this to you, Jeffrey.
yes, Susan.
It is definitely a genetic trait.
Yes, it is.
This ad nauseum talking, where you can expound for hours, and I could sit there and go, but that's okay.
Oh, you do okay yourself when it's your turn. You do okay.
All right, before we go, one last funny story. Do you have another something that this audience would love to
Oh, my
know? I was
gosh.
thinking there's something else that we haven't talked about, and I was trying to think if there was one other thing that we've often talked about him when we talk about Walter and some of his funnyisms. He had some interesting ways about it.
You put me on the spot.
I
That's
know.
the hard part. When you're catching me off guard here. If I had a
I
chance to
know.
think about it,
But-
he did love his puppies, his dogs.
He was a dog.
He was a dog lover.
And
Yeah.
your sister went back into his house and opened up a drawer, and he kept every dog tag he ever owned of
He
every
did.
dog.
Oh, speaking of a
Who
funny,
does that?
My uncle. Speaking of a funny story, in his later years working for the Owens Company, they sent him to Atlanta, Georgia, to check out a new factory for some reason. I don't know why. This is probably 35, 40 years ago. And, of course, they had to fly him down there to Georgia from Philadelphia. And this was a big deal because Walter did not leave the state of New Jersey very often. And they flew him down there, so he got back, and we ran into him in church on a Sunday morning after he got back. And I said, how was your trip down to Atlanta? Oh, it was good. It was good. He says, though, flying down there, he said, we must have had some kid flying the plane. And I said, I've already flown enough planes to know they didn't let kids fly the planes, but I'll go along with it. And I looked at him and said, really? Uncle Walter's had a kid? Oh, yeah. He said, the plane took off. It was fine. He said, but we got down there in Atlanta. He said, we landed that thing. Man, he said, he really bounced that thing on the runway. He said, he just must be learning. Okay. There's
Yeah.
Uncle Walter for you.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Walter Harris, you're thought of highly, and we will miss you. And we just thank you for the legacy that you've left behind. And I love the fact that you formulated the early childhood of the man that I love. And what a great history. And for those of you that didn't grow up in South Jersey, we've often said this, that New Jersey should be divided in half.
Yep.
There should be North Jersey and South Jersey, because South Jersey has nothing to do with North Jersey.
Nope. Two different
And
worlds.
Anyone who grew up in South Jersey, you know it right from the beginning. And if there was a poster boy for what South Jersey looks like, it's definitely Walter Harris. And I will end with this today too, Jeff. Psalm 107:8-9 says, "Oh, that men would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men." And I think about that for a second. The men that God has influenced your life and have gone on, and now it's your turn, Jeffrey, to be that patriarch. And it says also, "For he satisfies the longing soul and fills the hungry soul with goodness." So,
Well, as we found out not too long ago, we have another life to influence
and
coming.
in the meantime, the cycle of life and the circle of life,
Yep.
our Annie and Doug are having our third grandson
Coming up
coming up.
next April.
Wonder if they could name him Walter. No, they won't do that.
I hope not.
Anyway, thanks for tuning into the Subiquitous Podcast. Get on SueDuffield.com, and you can find out tour dates coming up, events, as well as for Christmas time. If you'd like to order any books or CDs, by all means, we welcome that as well.
Jeffrey would be a nice name.
Jeffrey would be a nice name. Yeah.
Doubt it, but it'd be a nice name anyway.
Oh, well, I doubt you'll get away with that.
I don't think so.
Anyway, thanks for tuning into episode number 80. We will see you next week.